Hey, welcome everyone. We have attendees joining us. Thanks so much to everyone coming in the room. We're just holding the line as we get all of our wonderful attendees. And then we will do a series of introductions and get started with our conversation today. Again, thanks to all of our attendees that are joining us in the room. We're just waiting for more folks to sign in and get situated, and then we'll get started with our panel discussion. Okay, everyone. Well, it actually looks like we've got a fair amount of folks in the room already, and I think we can get started. So, welcome everyone to the Pennsylvania Care Partnership's virtual speaker series. This session today is actually a part of our cultural and linguistic competency work throughout the PA Care Partnership. In particular, my name is Kelsey Leonard. I'm the Cultural and Linguistic Competence Coordinator for the PA Care Partnership, and am joined here today by wonderful individuals who I will mention in just a moment. But this month, July, is National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. And that's what actually brings us all together today. Every year, we love to host a few sessions. This year, it's one session because we've kind of sprinkled them out throughout the year that allow for us to have conversations about how culture really influences the way in which we as individuals, as families, as communities experience mental and behavioral health, and also the service delivery of care in the context of mental and behavioral health for youth and families. And so today's conversation is a wonderful opportunity for us to actually dive in to an area that has been raised as so important for us to have conversations about, particularly intergenerational caregiving is what we're talking about, or sometimes it's called second time around parenting or caregiving. And I really am just in love with the evolution of terminology, as well as we're thinking about what does it mean to be a caregiver? What does it mean to care for others? And what does it mean to do that across generations and across Pennsylvania? And I definitely cannot speak to that from my lived experience. So I'm so thrilled that we have folks today who are going to be able to share their lived experience and just a world of expertise that they've built through that lived experience and through the work that they've done to not only support their families, but to support their communities and the places that they love and live and call home. And so that's what brings us together today. For those that are also unaware about sort of the origins of National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, it was actually put forward by Congressperson Debbie Moore, and it was passed a few, almost a decade ago. I think it was 2008 or 2009, that it was actually recognized as a national month through Congress. And it really is an opportunity and an opportune time for us to celebrate, as well as build our knowledge around some of the challenges that are being faced by youth and families across the country, across the United States, maybe even across the world, and how, as I mentioned at the start of our conversation, culture influences that. And when we think of culture, it really is that big tent, big umbrella idea of culture. It's not only race and ethnicity, but it also is your socioeconomic status, the way in which you are experiencing potentially class struggles and classism, but also the beauty of communities, right? From your geography, whether you're a rural or suburban or urban community or something else in between. Maybe you're a part of the LGBTQ community and that has shaped your culture and your experience. And so many other aspects, right? Maybe you're a military family. Maybe you come from a farming town and a farming family. So all of these different pieces of ourselves that make up our culture and inform the way in which we experience the world and also experience healing, as well as potentially feeling unwell. And so that's what we want to talk about today, is how these different experiences are shaping that in Pennsylvania, and particularly for intergenerational caregivers across Pennsylvania. So I would like to now introduce two of our stellar colleagues who have been working through the Pennsylvania Care Partnership, CLC, Cultural and Linguistic Competency Community of Practice, both Lindsay Wagner and Melanie Trout from Greene County and Blair County, respectively. They're going to tell you a little bit more about themselves and why they're passionate about this topic. And so, Lindsay, I would like to start with you, if that's all right.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Lindsay Wagner. I am the Cultural and Linguistic Lead in Blair County, which is located south of State College, PA, better known for Penn State University. Altoona is the highest populated area in the county, which is about 45 minutes south of State College, where Penn State is. And we do have a lot of outlying areas, which are small, making the county overall a rural area. We are fortunate enough to have Penn State's largest branch campus located in Altoona. And some of our most recent initiatives that we are proud, our System of Care coordinator has really helped to start the Blair County Inclusion Alliance, which is a group, an advocacy group for LGBTQIA, and has been able to partner with Penn State Altoona. Also, Altoona does have a large 65 and older population, which is the fastest growing population in the county. And we have a strong behavioral health network and system partners in our county who are very strongly united and collaborative. And through our collaboration with them, those needs and resources were expressed for the intergenerational caregiving community. So that's where this webinar idea has come from. So I will turn it over to Melanie from Greene County.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Yeah, Melanie, we'll let you take it over.
Hi, everybody. My name is Melanie Trout. I am from Greene County Mental Health. I am the CASP coordinator, which is the Child and Adolescent Service System Coordinator, as well as the System of Care Coordinator in our county. Just to tell you a little bit about Greene County, it is located in the southwestern corner of Pennsylvania. We are about 1 hour south of Pittsburgh. We are bordered to the south by West Virginia, and we are bordered to the east by the Monongahela River, which creates a collection of river towns and communities in our county. We are predominantly rural, with a population around 37,000 people. There are many generational families living in our county. We have a rich agricultural and coal mining history as well. And I would say another thing that makes our county unique is that we have a lot of very strong families that are willing to be there for one another in times of need, in times of happiness, and also when anyone's struggling, to be there for them. And I would say through our cultural and linguistic competency plan, one of our main focuses throughout the years has been to build up LGBT supports within our county, to focus mainly to build up supports for our youth as well as adults in our county. So thanks for having me today.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Melanie and Lindsay, for joining us today and for really being co-hosts and co-sponsoring this discussion and conversation that we're going to have. So as folks are tuning in, and some may have just joined us, I wanted to also highlight what we have on the screen. We have a wonderful sketch note artist from Ink Factory joining us today, Emma. They are behind the scenes. You might see them. They're not spotlighted right now, but their screen is sharing. So as we are all having our conversation, which we'll start in a moment, we're going to have a bit of a fireside chat. It's sort of our format for today. Emma's going to be documenting, as you've probably already seen on the screen, what we're talking about and some of the key points and highlights that are coming through as we have this conversation. And so after today, we will have this graphic available for folks to download along with the recording for today, because we are also recording. Also, just a note for those that signed in maybe a little bit after the half of the hour, we are welcoming questions throughout today. We have a dedicated question and answer portion at the latter half of the end of our session today. But if you do have a burning question or it comes just as a light bulb, we encourage you to type it into the Q&A box. There's a little button at the bottom of your screen that will allow you to type in your question. We also, looks like we may have some issues on the chat, but if you do have a question or something that comes up because the chat is not working for you, you can also put it into the Q&A and we'll make sure that someone responds to that for you. So we are going to get started now with the conversation, but before we do that, I just wanted to orient everyone to who we have on the screen today. So we have some wonderful folks from Blair County, as Lindsay introduced. That includes Rhonda and Wade Walter, who will talk a little bit about their lived experiences and the family background of caregiving that they bring. We also have Kelly Conrad, who is a resilient caregiver that has faced many challenges, mothering a recovering addict, as well as being the guardian of her grandsons. But she's been able to navigate through that by providing various supports through therapies and educational programs. And then we also have Brenda Saver on the line as a dedicated caregiver. There we go, Brenda. A NAMI volunteer, and I'm sure they'll tell more about NAMI as an organization when they share more about themselves. But they have extensive experience. Their bio is really wonderful, and I can't do justice to any of the folks on the line bios, so they'll be able to share more about their lived experience and introduce themselves. But Brenda has been supporting families and youth, including providing kinship and foster care, and working as a family support partner for many, many years. We also, last but not least, have Diana Brocious joining us. Diana Brocious joining us. Diana is with the Pennsylvania Care Partnership. She is an intergenerational caregiver. Just so much wealth of expertise and knowledge, and has really been a guiding support for other families trying to navigate some of the same experiences that she has over her life. And so I want to now open it up for others. Melody is gonna come off of the screen and just give us a little wave there. Thank you, Melody. We'll bring you back later if you'd like. And so now it's us four and having this conversation today. And so the first question I have for everyone is really if you could share a bit about your personal journey as a caregiver. Tell us a little bit about yourselves. And we'll start with the folks up in Blair County. And it looks like Kelly might be the first on my screen. So maybe we'll start there.
My name is Kelly Conrad. I currently I have adopted my two grandsons, and they live with me. One is currently in a placement setting at this time, and the other is at home. My daughter is a recovering heroin addict and was unable to care for the boys, so they came to me through a couple different offices, and so she is still in recovery, and the boys live with me, and they have had difficulty of their own, quite a number of problems.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, Kelly. This is great. We're just getting a little bit of feedback that folks need the volume to be a little louder. So if you're able to, I might feel like you're shouting, but I think that would be great for us. There we go. Yeah, if we move it closer, that's perfectly fine. We can do that as everyone's speaking.
Okay. But I forgot where I was. The boys live with me. They have difficulty, but we've been working for a number of years with a lot of different offices to get them into a good place.
Thank you for that introduction, Kelly. Should we go next to Rhonda and Walter?
Hi, my name is Rhonda Walter. My husband Wayne Walter. I'm 65. My husband's 66. I never thought that I was going to be a mom again. We have 3 kids. The oldest one has the 4 grandchildren. My son is an interpreter, and my daughter's a licensed social worker. And the oldest one that has the grandkids is doing a long, long time in the state penitentiary because of drugs. And along the way, either through them not being able to take care of them, the older girls, they have 3 different parents, 3 different mothers. And the older girls have been with me the oldest one was with me for 4 years. She came in 9th grade and she left after she graduated. The 18-year-old is a mom. She was a mom when she was 15. She came with me last year. She stayed until she graduated. And I also am a mom to a 5-year-old that we've had since he was 15 months old. Now, he has a lot of emotional behavioral problems, and he has ADHD, which has really been hard. As you get older, you're not ready for all the running and all the carrying on that you have to do with that. So it's been good because my husband is there almost every day and he helps me with them. So it's been a journey.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, and looking forward to learning more about that journey. And Wayne, I know you're there as well. Do you have any words, or would you like to jump in later?
Yeah, later. Fine.
Okay. Well, then we'll journey over to Brenda.
Hi, my name is Brenda Saver. I live in southwestern Pennsylvania. I am a 53-year-old mother of 3 boys. I have one that has autism who is going to be turning 18 in November. I have a 19-year-old who is bisexual, and my oldest son is 33. I am a volunteer for NAMI, that's the National Alliance for Mental Illness. I took both the Family to Family and the NAMI Basics course. Let me see. I did briefly provide family support for high fidelity wraparound here in Greene County. Sorry, I'm going to probably stutter a lot. I'm a retired prison guard. I worked in the Washington County Prison for almost 21 years before I retired. I've provided kinship foster care for CYS and then became a certified foster care provider. You know, I come from a very poor family. Lots of alcohol addiction, drug addiction. Some of those kinship placements were due to drug addiction. And also a very ethnically diverse family, which, you know, when we first moved here in 1980 from where I was born, was kind of a culture shock, because I think my brother Aaron was probably one of the only Black kids in our school district, which presented quite a few challenges for him especially, but for the rest of siblings as well. You know, I think Greene County it's a wonderful little county, especially for the LGBTQ community. I know that there's lots of programs available, and I know that there's still lots of families struggling. So yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you so much for sharing, Brenda. And we'll navigate over to Diana.
Have to remember to take it off and mute. Hi. My husband and I adopted our children. They are Native American, full-blooded. They, back in 1980, now let me think, 86, they were 2 and 3 years of age and just turned that age, and we were the 5th child. Fetal alcohol syndrome, a lot of poverty, abuse, just you know, a sad, sad background. Needless to say, um, I managed a Hallmark store, not exactly prime, um, not exactly the place where you would get much information about that. And I was clueless, firmly admit clueless. My mother kept saying, "You sure you know what you're doing?" No, I didn't. But I've always been rather tenacious. So, and I love researching. And back then, the internet wasn't what the internet is today. So I made a lot of phone calls. And back then, you had to pay for those long distance phone calls to all over the country and a couple of different countries. We won't go into my husband's reaction. But anyway, fast forward, we have been raising our oldest granddaughter since birth. It was the first infant that we ever raised, so we had the time of our life, even though very quickly it was clear. I'll just give you a quick snapshot. She has eczema so bad that from pretty much day one, that she has eczema on her corneas. And I had a school teacher that told me I was lying and she didn't believe me in the middle of an IEP meeting. Some people. But anyway, she is now going blind because of that condition. And she's 20 years old. So she suffers with seizures, anxiety, bipolar, and I swear everything about her has an imbalance. Hormones, thyroid. So she has a lot of challenges that she has to navigate, and we try to help her navigate them all too. I think that'll do for now.
Thank you for sharing, and so sorry to hear about the progression of her vision impairment, but
we have faith. There's always hope.
Well, and that's a great way for us to transition to the next question that I have for everyone today is, you all started to unpack a little bit of some of the challenges you faced, but I wonder if you could go a bit deeper onto some of the specific challenges you've encountered as an intergenerational caregiver, and how you work to address them. As you mentioned, Diana, you have hope, or there have maybe been some great resources or supports that have helped you to navigate those challenges. So again, the question is, what challenges have you faced and how have you tried to navigate them? And we'll start up again with the folks in Blair.
Well, as I said, I have my two grandsons. They came to me when they were 5. My daughter being a heroin addict and their father being an alcoholic, and he had drug issues of his own, they had split up, and the boys were, the only word I can think of to use is feral. They had no guidance. They were animals. They were just animals. Physically aggressive, biting. It was really this. Children and youth came to me and said, "Would you please take these boys?" Because they were going to take them from my daughter. And they did. They said, "We really don't have anywhere to send them." They're at that age. They said there were no foster homes available at the time. And so I said, "Well, sure. I mean, how hard can this be, right?" Yeah, it was a shock. I had visited with them. I would go to my daughter's and bring the boys to my home on the weekends and have them on the weekends because she was not caring for them. They were dirty. They did not have clean clothes. So I would go to work Monday through Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday I was taking care of them. So I knew it wasn't wonderful, but when the police and children and youth finally gave me the full picture, I was appalled. But I got the boys, and through first we went through multiple turns at family-based I can't even tell you how many I have lost count. And we had evolution, and we had MST, and we had everything we could throw at them, everything. And they had been diagnosed. They were molested. They were neglected, physically abused, and molested. And they had been to a doctor, and he had put them on Ritalin, but my daughter was not giving them their medication. She was selling it.
Yep.
And so when I got them, I had no idea where to even start. So that's when I just jumped in. I just said, hey, Children and Youth said, we're going to refer you to. And I said, give me everything you have. Just throw it all at me, because I had no idea. So they've been diagnosed with ADHD, PTSD, ODD, and RAD. So I just refer to them as rough customers. There's some rough customers. But we have lots of meds, lots of counseling. We have had more interactions with juvenile probation than I care to even think about. And as I said, the one boy is at home and the other boy is in a residential treatment facility at the moment. But we have been navigating this for a goodly number of years, and we have seen improvement. We also have our back steps. We stutter sometimes, but they don't beat me anymore, and they don't bite. So I take that as improvement, because yes, living the way they did, that was the way they handled their frustrations and their problems, and their anger was through physical assault. So, but we have come a ways. It's been a long journey. It's not over yet. Like I tell, like the other day, my one grandson said, why do you still bother with us after everything that has happened and everything we've done and all the stuff that we've been through? Why do you still bother? And I said, it's because I love you and I want you to have a good life. I'm not going to be around forever. I want them to be able to take care of themselves, and when they need help, go look for help. And that's what I try. That's what me and all the other support that I have in this county, that's what we're trying to do. Get these boys on the road where they know, they can tell when they're going to have a rough day, and they go looking for some help. That's about all I can do, I think.
Thank you for sharing.
Well, our story is just sort of like Kelly's. There's been drugs.
Yeah.
The older two girls are out on their own now. With Bodie, he came because the mom and dad, both our son and his girlfriend, were on the drugs, and Jamie was put away, and the mother had other guys in, and whenever things got bad, and we were told by the relatives to come and get him. He was up at daycare, and we went up and got him, and he's been ours since 15 months. He's been going through a lot of therapy. He's gone to St. Clair for mental or trauma therapy. He goes to Kids First for emotional, behavioral, and sensory therapy. I want to put a shout out to Renee at Head Start, because she's been our savior for the last year. She has given us the ways where to go, and she's gone with us to our appointments and our meetings, and she's just been a godsend. Bodie's been 100% better. I mean, the first year in Head Start, he was like a wild one. He couldn't even go a whole day. And with all the behavioral reports that would come home every day. And then after the first year, Renee came in, and it's just like, I maybe had one or two behavioral reports this year. He went the whole year. I mean, he's just like a different kid. How about it, Wayne? So I know and we have a village. I mean, our son and our daughter, I mean, they help us. Bodie's with Uncle right now. But it's just, if you need help, you need to reach out for it. And it's there. All you got to do is ask. That's about all.
Thank you. I love that, what you shared with us there at the end of, if you need supports, it's there, and really being able to ask, right? Sometimes it's knowing, it's being one able to, and then also knowing who to. And I think, you mentioned that you've got this village, and this village is really important to your success. So thank you for sharing that. Brenda, how about for you? What have been some of the challenges, and how have you navigated them in your caregiving journey?
Well, ethnically, I think, as I mentioned previously, one of the first challenges that I faced in this area. My family is from southwestern Pennsylvania, but I was born in New Jersey, so that's where I spent the first 10 years of my life, and there it was common to see biracial couples. It never even occurred to me or crossed my mind that there was anything wrong with that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that other people would perceive that there was something wrong with that until mom moved us back here to southwestern Pennsylvania. And, back then, like I said, I think my brother was probably one of maybe 3 African-American kids in the whole school district. And it was really hard because this was a coal mining town, an old coal mining town. But I think that the area has made a lot of improvements. We are much more diverse now, and I think through programs and education and understanding, people have we've really turned that around in this particular area. Some of the other issues that I faced providing care, a lot of people, I think, want to reach out for help. They're just not sure where to go in order to get help. And I want to tell you that when they told me that my youngest son had autism, I was like gobsmacked. Just like, okay, what do I do with this? So I went online, I looked up Autism Speaks. And if you are dealing with autism, that website provides a lot of resources and a lot of information. That's a good website. NAMI is an excellent website or resource for people that are dealing with mental illness. They have lots of resources and lots of information. You can also attend NAMI Basics and NAMI Family to Family, which are support groups. And another place that you can reach out to is your school. If you're raising school-age children, reach out to the guidance counselor at the school. Oftentimes they have a lot of resources, and they can point you in the right direction. Case management is a good idea, and I'm sure that we can discuss all of these things further later on. But one of the other issues, my 19-year-old is bisexual. Brendan, not right now. Please, not right now. I'm in the middle of something. Thank you. And I kind of knew. I don't know how to explain to anybody. I can't, don't ask me how I knew, but I knew before Bowen knew. Like when he was in 1st and 2nd grade, there was just something, I just knew. So I didn't say anything to him. I didn't say anything to his dad. I waited until he was about 14 years old before I finally asked him. And he looked like deer in the headlights. His eyes were huge. And I said, "It's okay, Bowen, relax. I've always known. I just wanted to let you know that I know and that I love you unconditionally." And there were some struggles with him. So Greene County has an excellent is has excellent resources for LGBTQ youth. So he would attend youth gatherings and meetings and have, peer-to-peer interactions. I'm sorry. My youngest son has autism and he's here now. So I'm a little distracted, that's why. I also provided, like I said, foster care for CYS. I provided kinship care for CYS. And I think that's, it's a noble and a wonderful thing to do. It in and of itself presents problems. I've, especially for grandparents that are, raising their grandkids as a kinship. I know I can't speak about any other state or any other area, but I know that when you're doing a kinship placement here, they just kind of bring the kids to you and that's it. Here they are. Good luck. Have fun. Call us if you need anything. And then, sometimes they're a little hard to get a hold of. Whereas if you're a certified foster care provider, then you get a stipend and you get, you can apply for food stamps and all these things. But I think it's much harder to do a kinship placement because you're not getting any resources and you're not getting any help. I've had all 5 of my sister's kids brought to me in the middle of the night, had mattresses stretched from my kitchen to my living room on the floor because it was, I didn't know they were coming. So I think there's some challenges with providing kinship care. I do know that for grandparents that are attempting to get custody of their grandchildren, you can, well, again, I can't speak for other states or other areas because I'm not sure what's out there and what's available and what the laws may be in other places. But I know here for Southwestern Pennsylvania, you can get in touch with the Area Agency on Aging and they can help you to guide you. I know that they have meetings and stuff where they provide an attorney to give grandparents information about how to go about and what their rights are, how to go about getting custody, what their rights are. So that's a good resource. And I'm going to stop babbling now. Sorry.
No apologies. That was a wonderful wealth of resources. And so thank you for sharing all of the ways in which you have had to deal with these challenges, but also found ways to navigate it. So I'm sure others are really appreciative of hearing that. And I think you even answered some of the questions that were coming in the Q&A, but we'll re-share them with everyone when we get to that later on in our conversation. But I want to turn over to Diana to share a bit of how, some of the challenges you've experienced and how you've been able to navigate them. Oh, sorry, 1 second, Diana.
Oh,
Nope,
yes,
you're
it does.
unmuted.
Okay, thanks. Fortunately, Brenda brought up the challenge that that a lot of us have is that we chose not to do anything legal in regards to our granddaughter. Having adopted 2 children, we saw, even though our children's parents had died, we saw the challenges they had with us not being blood and not having that background ancestry of them. And even though they came to understand, our daughter has since passed away, but our son is 40. I can't believe I have a 40-year-old son. Oh my gosh. But anyway, he is very much okay with it now, but he very much was not okay with it for many years. And I understood that. So we chose not to do anything legal with our granddaughter. We wanted, because her father's side of the family was fine with it, but and so was our daughter, but we did not want to have that piece. And so yeah, there's no financial help. You're on your own. So one of my biggest challenges, and I celebrated when she graduated from high school. You cannot imagine. Yeah, you can. I'm sure you can. All of our children, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, which means nobody wants to own it. Mental health, physical, and I'm not talking about the people we dealt with. I'm talking about the hierarchy of medical and insurance and all that other stuff. So you're just always dealing with symptoms, and that's what they deal with. But it didn't take very long till they, after I kept bringing it up, and then finally we had a neuropsych done, which said, I think this grandmother is right. We're talking developmental delays, and they just went down through the executive functioning and how all of the damage was there. The IQ was fine, so they talk very well, but they cannot transfer use of what they learn. And there's the problem. It was very difficult with our children because nobody had even heard of anything like that. But in school, like Brenda said, I think it was Brenda, the guidance counselors were, for the most part, helpful. We had one that was not, who actually worked against us. But every year is a new teacher, and every year meant that you had to completely re-educate. A lot of total, not even misunderstandings, just not even understanding that the possibility that an expression of anxiety can be in bizarre ways, can be completely counterintuitive to anything you've encountered in your, average run-of-the-mill life. And you run into that a lot. So many things that your children do are completely misread. Totally. That was probably one of the biggest things, but it was also our saving grace because we had a psychologist who did the workup on our granddaughter and was able to get her an IEP because of the severity of those anxieties. So even though the school, many of the people there drove me nuts, there was some bright spots along the way. And without them, I probably would have tried homeschooling in some way. I have no idea how. And with us, the massive drug and alcohol, substance abuse, and mental health that existed on both sides of her genetic family, they still loom today. They're the guiding thing. So the challenges you have parenting is huge, trying to impart that there are things you should not ever do. It doesn't matter what everybody else does, and get through all of that. And you do run into some other issues that have to do with who they are as a person, which I won't even get into that, but I'll just leave it at that the school was, that was a biggie.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. So I think where we'll go next, and we had a request come in from the audience, which I think is great. We're gonna just pause our screen sharing of the wonderful infographic we have being created for us by our sketch artist, Emma. So I'll just, and then you'll be able to see a bit more of the panelists for today. So we're gonna transition to the next question for our panelists, which is, how is your cultural background? And remember, sort of big tent, big umbrella idea of culture, but how has your cultural background influenced your caregiving experience? And for some of you, that may be across cultures for your family members that you're providing that care for. So again, we'll go back up to our wonderful folks in Blair, and we've had a little bit of audio issues, so just feel free to project. I know you feel like you're yelling, but not for the audience, you aren't. So thanks so much.
Well, I come from intergenerational caregiving myself. I was raised by my grandmother and grandfather. So I refer to myself as a dinosaur. I was raised by people who were born, at the turn of 2 centuries ago, so they had a different take on life. My grandfather was a coal miner. My grandmother was a housekeeper, a mother. They had, she would do some house cleaning on the side, and we always had a garden, and we raised chickens. And so I'm kind of old in that way. I was raised by people who were raised when the Titanic sank, you know. So it's a whole, it's a different outlook, I guess. But we always joked that, you know, they would say to me, Kelly, you're just too stupid to quit. And that's sort of where I am. I'm, you know, that's my culture, where you're just too stupid to quit. You have setbacks in life, and we did, you know, a lot of economic. My grandfather got injured in the coal mines, and it was we had a big family because my grandmother and grandfather had 9 kids, and then there was me, odd one at the end, you know, and so there was always, when I was growing up, Sundays were a huge thing. Everybody would come to my grandfather's house. It was always a huge meal, big meal. Throughout the week, we always had cousins and whatever dropping in all the time. After school, you'd come there. And if my grandmother wasn't able to be there, then one of my aunts or uncles would. There was always somebody who was there coming in, filling in for, you know, the adult, whoever. And we grew up as a clan, I guess, we had our own village. We have our own village just in my family. And so that's sort of where I'm from. You pitched in, you did what needed to be done, even if, I mean, you know, you didn't like it, so what? You know, we'd come home from school, you do your homework, okay, the garden needed weeded, chickens, you know, we had to go feed. My Uncle Don had a small farm, cattle and pigs. Can't tell him it, you know, feed the cows, feed the pigs, cleaning up after the pigs. It was a different kind of growing up. But that was my childhood. We, you know, there was a ton of us, and we were always around each other, always there for each other. We were always cared for. It wasn't always by the same person, but there was always somebody there.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think it really speaks to your culture, the culture of your family, and how that shaped your ability to, you know, have these kinship placements, to want to pass that on to your grandchildren, to, you know, be there in that similar caregiver role that you experienced through the culture of your family. So really appreciate you sharing that with us. Rhonda and Wayne, what about for you?
Well, I think it's a generational thing. It's more responsibility on our part that the kids are taken care of. And I think that's what keeps us going, that, you know, you love your grandkids and you want them to have the best. So, and ours was like, we had the Sundays, we'd always go to Grandma and Pap's, and it just was more family. I think a lot of that's going down the way now.
Families are so much smaller,
Yeah.
and they move away.
Yeah. They're so busy, I think, anymore. I think that's where a lot of you don't have that closeness like you used to. That's about all I have to say.
Okay. Well, thank you all.
I'm just absorbing all of this.
Yeah. Well, you're a silent powerhouse there, Wayne. I can tell. So we'll move over to Brenda, and Brenda will let you share your thoughts. Oh, and I'll just unmute you there. There you go. Now you're good.
Sorry. Primarily, first of all, I think the biggest factor in when I was growing up was we were very, very poor. Well, you know, let me backpedal a little bit. We didn't always have enough food, but there was enough money scrounged up so that some of the adults in the family could go and do things like, you know, gamble or play video games. So I don't want to say we lived in poverty, but part of that was due to irresponsible caregiving. So I was kind of used to not having a lot of things. I mean, most of my needs were met as far as shelter and food and clothing. I didn't, we didn't have new clothes. Sometimes I didn't even have clean clothes, but I had clothes on. So, as long as those bare minimums were met, I think, the people that were caring for me when I was growing up were content. And I want to take this opportunity now, because in hindsight, I realize as an adult how much the people outside of my family understood or had to have been aware of what was going on inside of my family. Because I wouldn't be where I'm at today doing the things that I do, or having the life that I've lived thus far if it weren't for a handful of people outside of my family. I'm talking about my kindergarten teacher, my third grade teacher, a police officer. I used to steal food. I'd go into the convenience stores or to the grocery stores, and the other kids I was with would be stealing toys, and I'd be stealing something to eat. And a police officer had caught me shoplifting once and pulled me aside. And in hindsight, he must have been aware of what was going to happen if he had taken me home and said anything to my parents, because he just pulled me aside. He read me like a book. He knew exactly just the right things to say to talk to me about being dishonest. And I have not forgotten that conversation all these years later. And I still apply the logic that he used with me in my daily life. And I can't tell you how many times I've had that conversation with kids in my own care. So you just don't know. As a caregiver, you just don't know, whether it's your own children, whether it's somebody else's children. Some of these people were in and out of my lives in under 5 minutes. And just the conversation, that one conversation in those 5 or 10 minutes had enough of an impact on my life that I went to work at a prison instead of getting 3 hots and a cot for my entire life. I guess that's how what they said, 3 hots and a cot. But culturally, my mother was after, she got through her 20s and was a bit more of a responsible parent. It was all about work ethic. And I walked, and I'm not trying to get any kudos or anything, but one time, because I didn't want to call off work. I couldn't bring myself to miss a single day of work. Unless I had an amputation, I was going to work. I walked from Washington County to where I lived. That was about a 7.5-hour walk. It was a 24-mile trip because my car wasn't working and I didn't want to call off work. So that's the kind of work ethic that my mother instilled in me. And I've tried to instill that into my kids as well. I mean, it was all about work ethic. There was very little nurturing. It was all about work. Very little nurturing. So it's important, like I said, as a caregiver, to make sure that I take the time and I have conversations with the kids, when they're coming home from school, not just, hey, how was your day? Or did you get in any trouble? So what was your favorite part of the day? What wasn't your favorite part of the day? Just talk to your kids, even if they're not your kids. Talk to the kids every day. I think that's very, very important. The way that I was raised, I kind of, it was work ethic. It was all no nonsense. If you ran to my mom and said, Mom, it hurts when I do this, she looked right in your face and said, well, then don't do that. That's the kind of the parenting that I got. If it hurts when you do this, then don't do that. Go away. So as I grew up and started providing care and caring for my own kids, somebody had to approach me and say, hey, Brenda, you're really good. You're a really good provider, but you need a little help with the nurturing department. Stop being a prison guard when you get home. And that stunned me because it was true and I didn't realize it. You know, when Michael did something wrong, I was Johnny on the spot telling him he did something wrong. But when he did something well, I never said anything to it, because you don't give an inmate a pat on the back and tell him good job mopping that floor. That's just not what you do. So, you know, it's also important as a caregiver, you know, if you see it, say something. If somebody, if it's your kids, if it's, you know, a friend of yours, if something needs to be corrected, don't feel like it's none of my business, I shouldn't say anything. If it's a relative, if it's somebody that you truly have a relationship with, they're going to appreciate. Even if it angers them in that moment, they're going to appreciate it. Because if I had never been approached about learning how to be more nurturing, I would have just carried on doing what I was doing, you know? So I think nurturing needs to happen in consequences. My mom was big on consequences, probably a lot bigger than she needed to be. My mom had a board. She named it Simon. And yeah, so if we were in a store and you know, you were misbehaving, she'd say, you want to play Simon Says? And we knew that was code for you're about to get your butt whooped. So and sometimes it was a little excessive. I had to make, you know, when I had kids, I had to tell myself, listen, you know, I'm not going to do that to my children. I'm going to say here, and I know that there's I can't remember the word for it. I'm one myself, as a matter of fact, but I am not opposed to corporal punishment. They still do it in schools. Well, I guess it depends on where you go to school at, but don't ever hit a child out of anger. And I'm not saying that I run around here with a board, you know, cracking the kids off. My kids are all grown anyway, but my mom was, you know, she was a little excessive with the Simon Says. So that was something culturally, that's how I grew up. That's what I knew. That's what I learned. And I had to change that before I decided to have kids. Don't hit your children out of anger. Sometimes we have to learn.
I was just
Go
saying,
ahead.
I think that's a theme that comes up quite often in intergenerational caregiving is, you know, the conversations around discipline and how that differs across generations and has as we've evolved as communities and countries and a family. So I appreciate you sharing, what that evolution has looked like for you personally, Brenda, and I'm sure there are others that have had similar experiences or have had similar sort of almost existential questions of, okay, how do we approach this, based on what was taught to us, sort of the old, question of nature versus nurture, and what is now appropriate for, for the generation of young people that we want to, rear and bring into the world and be carers for. I just want to transition, if that's all right, Brenda, over to Diana now for this question.
Yeah,
then we'll come back around. No, this is great. So Diana, this question, just as a reminder, is about how culture has shaped your experiences of caregiving, and how you've navigated that.
I'm the oldest of four girls, 1950s parents, as I like to say, with challenges on both sides of the families. But my grandparents, my dad was the only child, and he was the only child to his parents. So I was the first girl in several generations, a good spot to be, I might add. But then three more came after me, much to my disgust. And, they followed me everywhere. I never wanted to have children. I was in my 20s, well, before I changed my mind about that. But anyway, my grandparents were involved in every facet of our life. I adored my grandparents. These were my dad's parents because my mother's parents died early. So I had that very strong influence from people that, they came through the Depression. They came through World War II. They saw the effects of Korea and all the other issues that encompassed society. I remember chain gangs, seeing them when we would go to vacation at the beach down south. I just read Jimmy Carter's one of his books. It's about Between Dawn and Daylight or something like that. But it's about him growing up, and it was like going back in time for me, even though I grew up in Western Pennsylvania in this county. It's still, we did the Sunday, you went to church, you came home, and you had a big dinner. And of course, being girls, you did the dishes. Lucky us. Of course, we had no brothers. We had our own garden. We did canning. My husband grew up on a huge working farm. So he grew up in that mindset, and I swear he was born that way. Everything is black and white. If you do this, then this happens. If you do that, that happens. We adopted our kids. None of them made any sense. You would ask our son, why did you do that? I don't know. Why did you do that? I don't know. And I finally said to my husband, when are you going to get it? He doesn't know. He doesn't know. And so I used to laugh and think, oh my gosh, God must have put us on this path to open up parts of our brains that just were not functioning before. So we grew up with Christian Judea morals, and faith and all that guidance was very important for us. We had family holidays and events. Mom and dad had friends that would come in, the relatives, in and out. We did vacations on the beach. We had a camp up north. But, it wasn't, and we had that work ethic too, Brenda. Oh, let me tell you, I think, maybe that has something to do with just our area. I don't know. But, my dad committed suicide, and I have another grandfather that committed suicide. I have a cousin who committed suicide 2 weeks after she gave birth. I have an aunt who was almost successful in suicide. I know suicide very well. A lot of mental health issues. On my dad's side, the Irish side, a lot of alcoholism, but an amazing ability to play music by ear. My dad could play the piano, the accordion, and other instruments. Just hear a song and sit down and pick it out. Something, unfortunately, I did not get that gift. The ability to write poetry, and my dad was a mathematical genius. My mother grew up being shuffled between all of her older siblings because her dad committed suicide, shot himself, and her mother had to work. And it was a time whenever, life was very difficult for her. The farm had to be sold. So my mother, I watched the trauma from all of that, feeling like you're not wanted. And so in school, when I was in elementary school, the first 6 years of my life, I was horribly bullied because I wore glasses from first grade on. Of course, I thought getting my blue glasses with silver sparkles and the cat eyes was the coolest thing in the world, but it set me up to be horribly ridiculed. And I would cry every day at lunch, leaning against the back of the school, every day outside. Rain, snow, shine, it didn't matter. So I learned empathy. I'm not sure I was born with it, at least not to my sisters. Of course, that didn't even happen through the teens. I was busy devising ways to get rid of them. But, and one of my sisters did. She got mad at the other one, strung wire. Now, mind you, this is the most intelligent one, supposedly. Strung wire across the hallway, waited till Brenda started walking down the hallway, pulled it, and sent her going tin cups over head over heels down the hallway. Yes, we had a fun family. 4 girls in puberty and a mother in menopause at the same time. That's been pointed out to me more than once. So, but we had a lot of fun, and we were direct. And I was the mouthy one. Why my mother had 3 more after me is yet a mystery that's never been cleared up. So my background was unknowingly very influential. And I think my ability to go in the direction that I found myself And I feel quite certain that from the very beginning, God was exposing me, shaping me, whether I wanted it or not. That would start with the three sisters. And when the last one was born, I remember my grandmother taking the call, standing in the hallway of the house on Dime Road, and my grandmother going, "Oh, it's a girl." And I went, "Oh, great, another one." And I was 6 years old at the time. This was not a point of excitement for me. It was like, can we trade her in? But I think all of us, whether we realized it or not at the time, I mean, maybe if you're really aware, I was never aware. I have ADD, big surprise. I was never aware. I could sit down beside Jack the Ripper and he'd be holding the bloody knife and I'd be saying, "Sue, how's your evening going?" I just never had that, obvious ability. So I really do think, even you, Kelsey, all of us come to this place with experiences behind us that really may have turned into our gems and our jewels that enabled us to do what we do. That's it.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think you put it so eloquently. Like, that is what culture is about. It's about all of these, little bits of ourselves that make up the experiences of our lives. And so, I heard a range of things from, your immediate and extended family experiences, to food and dinner, to religion, to the communities that you come from, and having to move. And so, like, all of these different things have shaped, your cultural backgrounds, and then influence thereby, how you tried to navigate and make decisions about how you'll care for these other people that have been put into your lives and have come into them. So thank you for sharing all of that. I know we have a few more questions, but we've had quite a few come in from the audience, and I also want to maybe transition there to our open Q&A, get a few more of those questions from the audience. So audience folks, if you have questions for our intergenerational caregivers, please feel free to type those into the Q&A. One of the questions that came through is, do you find it hard to differentiate between being in the parent role and wanting to be in the grandparent or other sort of generational role you might hold?
I myself, yes, sometimes. Sometimes I don't want to be the parent. I don't want to have to be that responsible. I would rather be the grandma that
Just takes you out, takes you to the movie, get you ice cream and takes you home. But don't have that. So yeah, you don't get a break. You don't get a break. You went from your kids to their kids. For me, I had a 4-year break. I can remember 4 years where I didn't have, and it's sometimes I think, because when I go to work, there are other ladies there and they talk, and this is what they do with their grandkids and blah blah blah, and I think, wow, never going to happen with me. I don't have that part to play, because I have to play the parent. So sometimes it's hard, but you do what you gotta do.
Thank you for sharing. Anyone else want to respond to that question? Yeah.
Yes, our 5-year-old calls me mom.
There you go.
Well, they all will call me mom, but and I'll tell them I'm Gran. I've never really had a break. 44 years I've had kids, either my own or my grandkids. So it's different.
Thank you for sharing. Brenda or Diana, have you had difficulty separating it, or has it been more easy?
Oh, heavens no. My granddaughter, when she's usually in trouble or in her mind, I'm being mean, which is pretty frequent. She's 20 now, but she's developmentally delayed. So we haven't left the teens yet. I pray daily. She'll say, most grandparents do really wonderful things with their, children, their grandchildren. She says, and you don't. I said, well, maybe that's because today, yesterday, oh yeah, forever, I'm the mom grandparent. And so, yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? It is what it is. You try to do as much as you can along those lines, but it is what it is.
Thank you for sharing. Any thoughts, Brenda, or should we go to the next one? I think you might have actually even answered that one in the chat at some point. Yeah, okay. Well, one of the other questions that came through was, can the speakers comment specifically on any financial challenges or resources that are or are not available specifically to grandparent caregivers of children? And I know there was some mention of that in the context of, I think Brenda spoke to it a bit, kinship placements versus other type of placements. But yeah, just more broadly, if there's anything around the finance aspects of your intergenerational caregiving that you want to share, we'd love to hear from you.
Well, I myself had the kinship placement. I didn't know of anything else. And when Children and Youth said to me, well, we're going to get you a guardian by kinship, I was like, hey, sounds like a plan. What did I know? Nothing. So that's what we've done. And then 2 years into that, I adopted them. So, however, Children and Youth did pay for my lawyer when I adopted them. I think they were just glad to get rid of them. Okay, here, and they were no longer a Children and Youth problem. And that was okay by me because I was really getting kind of tired of every 30 days somebody coming to check to see if I had running water, food in my refrigerator, and did my toilet flush. I had so many other things that I had to be concerned about. They were in trouble at school. They were physically aggressive. They were just not listening. And yeah, okay, so they have food, the toilet flushes, and yes, there's hot water. But help me with something else. But that Children and Youth that was their main concern. I guess they thought, okay, this woman's going to take these boys in. Good luck to her. And so, but yeah, I was unaware that there was anything other than what they were telling me. And I didn't go looking because I thought they knew best. So, as Brenda said, start, at that time I didn't have internet and all that. Yeah, I don't know whether it's better if you look for yourself, if you investigate yourself for different options, or whether maybe the options should be put out there better. But if you're doing this without any experience at all, at least I was very naive and I just thought they were doing the best they could for me.
Thank you for sharing.
Wouldn't have known hardly anything except way back when we adopted our children, I started a support group. The CASP coordinator at the time for the county asked me if I would start a support group for, parents, whoever raising children with special needs. And so I and another woman did. And by trying to brainstorm to bring in speakers, and we had a psychologist who came in a lot, psychiatrists come in and talked about there was just, you start to learn. And back then you would have people run off copies, because you didn't have the internet like it, you just didn't have it, period. But I learned a great deal through that there was the most important thing that we ever had was their medical insurance coverage. Dear heavens, we would have never made it without that. And still, that has been a godsend. And then eventually being able to get on Social Security disability for them, that was another one. As adults, they did. So it's a big one.
Thank you for sharing. Did anyone else, Rhonda, or others, did you have anything around the finances you wanted to share? No? Okay. So there was, oh yes, Brenda, go right ahead.
Somebody put a link in the chat box from Penn State about resources. So yeah, for finances for kinship placement and grandparent foster care. So be sure to copy that link. That was it.
we're on the same wavelength. So folks, if you aren't able to see it in the Q&A, I did just post it in the chat. This came from Darlene mentioning the Penn State Extension Program. So hopefully folks can access that now, or at least be able to copy that over. Okay, so the next question we had come in, which I think it's a really excellent question. Do you find your personal support system or friends to be supportive of your intergenerational caregiving, or do you sometimes feel isolated from your same aged peer group?
Oh, isolation, big time. Yeah, they have no idea. You know, they have no idea what you're going through. Their kids are gone and their grandkids are with their kids, and they don't have kids at home all day, every day. And they don't have calls from the school, and they don't have to take their kids to the doctor or the psychiatrist or the counselor or whatever, court. You know, they don't have those, you know, and they're going, you know, they go here and they go there and they're off, you know, having a couple drinks and they're off doing the bingo or the trivia, or they go away for the weekend, you know. Absolutely. I don't have friends. I just don't have the time or the energy at the end of it all for anything like that. I do have people that I work with, but generally if I say something about one of my boys, they'll say, I don't know how you do it. And that's all they have to say. You know, because they don't know how I do it, and they don't want to find out because they, you know, I think they're afraid that I might ask for some help. So, you know, they keep a distance. They keep a social distance. I don't go anywhere. I don't go out with friends. We don't go anywhere. We don't do anything. I have coworkers, but I don't really have friends.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience and being so honest with all of us.
We thought we were gonna, when we retired, that we could do some of the things that we always had planned on doing. And we retired in November, and we got Bodie in November. And it's been our trip. And we don't go anyplace either. I mean, if we go anywhere, it's usually a family just out a day, and it's usually with the aunt and uncle would go along with us. So it's different. I don't know that I'd say I wouldn't do it again, because I think I would. I mean, I love my kids and I love my grandkids, and it's just every day's an adventure.
You have to make choices.
Yeah, well, it's a choice, yeah.
It's a choice you
Yeah.
make, and you decide, this is what I'm going to do,
Yeah.
and this is the choice I'm going to make.
And the kids usually make the choices for you, don't they? That's all I have.
Thank you for sharing. How about for other folks? Have you had moments of feeling isolated, or your peer group not understanding, or ways that you've navigated that? Maybe you've got like a great group of folks who are your village and your support network, and maybe they're your peer group or they're a different age group. I don't know. And it could be Brenda or Diana, whoever wants to jump in.
I would say the answer to that is both. I do have some friends that have stuck with me. My husband does too. I think he feels the loss of a typical retirement because it can be pretty rough, pretty ugly around here. I find myself in both pots. And as is usual, you want to be in the other pot whenever you're not. So you just grit your teeth and go forward. It's about all you can do. And yes, I think you're right. There's some people, I have family that say, I don't know how you do it. And I guess it's not their fault. They cannot even fathom how our lives are. I don't know, maybe Brenda has a different take on that.
Doesn't seem like it. Brenda, did you have some thoughts?
Yeah, NAMI is a good resource I think for NAMI is basically, it's the AA or the Al-Anon of people that have family members with emotional, behavioral, and mental health issues. One thing that I would suggest is, and I have a good support, but what I've learned is if every time they see your number on the caller ID, they're expecting to hear about all the tragedy and all well, I had to go to the school and I got a call from this person. If the only thing that, because sometimes we can get so wrapped up in what's going on with our kids and our grandkids that we forget how to be our own person. And every conversation we have with our friends turns into, well, this happened and that happened. And even if it's, good stuff, if it has to do with the people that you're caring for, people are human. And if every time your name comes up on your friend's caller ID, they know that they're going to have a 30-minute sounding board so that you can complain about everything that's going on in your life, they want to enjoy your company as a person, not a caregiver. So spend some time with your friends, use some respite. I think that's something that hasn't been covered. There's respites available. Go through for me, it's Melanie. Melanie is my contact if I need a respite. Melanie, I need a respite. So spend some time outside and away from your caregiver role, and understand that the people that are closest to you, while they are your support systems, they want to have a relationship with you outside of being your support system. So I think that's a healthy way to look at that.
That's fantastic advice. Thank you so much. And I think that's a good transition as we're rounding out to what I think will be our last question for today. And then we'll also bring Emma back on to share our final sketch art. But the final question I have for you is, really thinking about maybe potentially resources or advice that you would give for someone who's maybe just starting out on their intergenerational caregiving journey. Like they may have just gotten the call that they have, this placement coming, and what advice would you give them that you wish maybe someone had shared with you when you were starting out? And maybe we'll start up again with the folks in Blair and then just make our way around.
Get as much information as you can. Ask for referrals to everything in sight, because some things you may not necessarily have need of at the beginning, but you may later on. But get every bit of information, all the offices, all the counselors, everything. Just take in all that information. And like I said, even if you don't use it at the very beginning, you may need it, a year or so down the line. You may need something different.
Thank you.
I think she needs to have a lot of patience and just take one day at a time, because each day is going to bring its own situation. But you get through it. It's worthwhile after you have your kids or your grandkids there. It's not bad.
Thank you for sharing that. How about for you, Brenda? What advice would you wish someone had given you when you started out?
An alphabetical list of resources. When you get a call, especially if you've got a special needs child coming in, or even if it's a stranger, if you're a foster parent, resources. Just, you don't know where to go for resources. Case management is good for that. I've had a very good case manager for many years now for my son Brendan, and my older son Michael when he was growing up as well. So yeah, I would say resources. Go to your school, go through your local mental health agencies, community actions. Yeah, with everything being online, just be careful. If you're going to go online and look for information, make sure that it's coming from a state or a government agency and not just some YouTuber, because you might wind up in a world of hurt. But yeah, just resources initially and immediately, as coming into this, that's what you need. You need information, lots of resources, and then support to help you utilize those resources.
And I think what I heard from both of you there as we transitioned to Diana for closing thoughts as well is being able to navigate or find those resources has actually come from your local county folks. And so folks like Lindsay and Melanie, and being able, to have these system of care coordinators and staff who are there to support you. So I think for those listening in as well, as we sort of bring this back to the Pennsylvania Care Partnership and to like, well, what do you guys actually do? Well, we're here to help you navigate and provide those supports at the local level and make sure that it can be more accessible, I think, as you all are mentioning, because sometimes it's not, or you didn't know about us until you were, deep in the thick of it. And maybe if you had known earlier on, it would have helped. So Diana, yeah, you've worked in this space for a really long time trying to get folks the resources and the advice they need. What are your thoughts?
Two jump to mind. When my husband and I adopted our children, it was a very different world. We did it on our own for 8.5 years. It wasn't until our son hit puberty that I went looking for, okay, is there anybody out there? And a sister of mine who's an RN was helpful in steering me in the right direction. I didn't know about anything that existed. I just would, like I said, call people anywhere. I had no problem with that. And the other thing is, so, there's a lot of universities out there. There's a lot of help and referral lines like ours that I answer. There's a huge amount out there. Brenda brings up a good point. Be careful if you look at independent things, just be careful what they are. There's a lot of really good stuff out there and a lot of good on the ground things, like your area may have a support group that's run by somebody independent, but it may be a really good one. There's a lot of online groups now. You want to be careful of them. It doesn't mean you don't use them. A lot of people use them now because, of COVID. The other thing I would say, just as a grandparent, is remember what you learned the first time around. Don't sweat the small stuff. And in this world, boy, do you realize how much stuff you never realized was and is the small stuff. This is a world that teaches you what the really important things are that you need to try and get nailed down so that someday when you aren't here, they can make it. And so many things, you think you do that the first time around with children that have special needs. Well, whenever you go through it the second time, even if it is boom, boom, I think I had 6 months of the empty nest, but it's a very, you just keep having your eyes open more, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I worried about the fact that he did this or he did that. What was I thinking? Bad mother. You just have to forgive yourself a lot and just get up the next morning. Okay, this too shall pass, and we're on the road again. That's it.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, I think that's a great point to end on: forgiveness and extending grace and recognizing that we are all learning and growing together across all ages and all generations. So I really want to extend a heartfelt thank you to all of our intergenerational caregivers today, to the panelists, to our county leads. Thanks to Emma, our sketch note artist, who's sharing one of our final products today. It'll load in just a moment. We also at the Pennsylvania Care Partnership, we hope you enjoyed today's conversation. This is a part of our year-long virtual speaker series. And so the next session is coming up on August 8th, Tuesday, August 8th from noon to 1:30. It's back to school. What do you need to know with Beth Ann McConnell? And the link is now in the chat for anyone that wants to go there and register for that session. I'm sure there are going to be a lot of really excellent resources provided for the back to school. And I can't believe we're saying that we're even that close. But
Hey, Kelsey, before I forget, the other thing, because I even wrote it down and looked right at it and didn't see it. One of the smartest things I ever did was I have apologized. I always apologize to my kids if I made a wrong call. Even later on when they were adults, and I would say, you remember that time I did this? Boy, was that wrong. And it has made a huge difference. And it still does. Being human is a good thing to admit.
Thank you for sharing that with us as well. It's a wonderful advice for folks, and hopefully we can all take that to heart and put it into practice. So as you can see, our wonderful sketch art from our conversation today, this will be available on our PA Care Partnership website under webinars for you to be able to download. We'll make sure all of our panelists have a copy of it. You'll also be able to find on the website a link to today's recording. So if you want to rewatch this, or maybe you missed a resource, or you want to be able to reach out, you'll be able to watch that recording back or share it with your colleagues or your friends or others who may be working on some of these topics as well. So with that, we just want to thank everyone for your participation today, for engaging in this virtual space with us. And again, thank you to all of our panelists. Take care, be safe, and happy National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. Take care.